introduction, my name's Andy. I'm the current chair of the honor committee. And whenever I vote on things, I like to have kind of the most up-to-date information. And so I want to just come through and provide that information if I could. I read the resolution, and there were concerns about white students making up a minority of reports and racial disproportionate reporting. And the problem with the bicentennial report, if you look at that data a little bit closer, is that yes, 48% of those students in that report were reported that were white, but 30% were unaccounted for. They are just an unknown block, and this completely throws off that data. More recent data has actually shown that these reporting demographics are almost right in line. You can see this in my recent Cavalier Daily op-ed. And additionally, any discrepancies that we do see are based on two things. The first is the fact that we only receive reports. We don't police and we don't go solicit opinion. And second is that 0.2% of the student body has ever reported in any given point. So small sample sizes are, elude no one. Secondly, honor shares expulsion as a sanction with both the UJC and Title IX. Our problem is not universality, but our problem is universality, not in the sanction. One of the biggest problems that we've seen this year was that we tried to bring multi-sanction, and the politicking of the committee did not allow that. And so what you have now is a watered down single sanction. This is going to pigeonhole the next committee into trying to make this thing fit without ever providing a multi-sanction. Your next slate of representatives are very well positioned to provide this. And this is something that we have advocated for, and I've advocated for since I was elected. And so a multi-sanction system is what can actually serve this student body, not another bit of piecemeal change that's butchered the Constitution for the last 40 years. Philosophically, this reform equates honesty at the IR with lying your way through the entire case process and then getting to the end of your rope and then now receiving the exact same sanction as someone who was honest up front and clear about what they did. Practically, the influx of hearings with the IR rendered a moot process is going to actually really strain our case processing ability, insofar that our current case processing is really rigorous and actually rather well defined. We have no disproportionate sanctioning, and we have very thorough hearings. With this, we'll be seeing 60 hearings a year instead of 8. This is going to strain the current committee and allow more opportunities for failures on the part of support officers and for failures on the part of us being a thorough and diligent process. We've done a lot of work in the past to make this process good, and this is going to reverse that work.
Okay, thank you, Andy and Christopher, for your comments. We now have one additional comment that unfortunately has been submitted with only one part of the person's name, omamus, and the question is, how will the referendum affect Black and low-income students as well as international students? I'm not sure if this individual happens to be on the Zoom call to clarify if they wanted to speak, but I will drop that question in the chat. So during our legislative session, any speakers can address that if they'd like to, but this is unorthodox. I don't know. I feel like it would be appropriate, since we seem to have 2 honor committee representatives with us right now, to give them a chance to answer the question. Gabby, I'll look to you, since the public comment is for representatives. Would you like to give Andy and Christopher a chance to answer this public comment question, or would you prefer to just debate it as a representative body?
I'll allow it.
Okay, Gabby will allow it. So Christopher and Andy, you can both take maybe 1 minute to just answer the question that I've dropped in the chat, which is, how will the referendum affect Black and low-income students as well as international students? And we'll go in the order that your comments were submitted. So Christopher, you can go ahead and go first.
Sure. Well, thanks for the question. I think, as I highlighted in my opening statements, and as all of us are well aware, we can't minimize how inequities what inequities have been present in the past and what inequities could be present in the future. It's well documented that marginalized groups and international students have been disproportionately affected by sanctioning, by the IR at varying points. And as I alluded to, we don't know to what extent bias is currently influencing how professors are sanctioning students on an ad hoc basis. At the very least, this referendum ensures that the most severe of sanctioning does not fall on marginalized communities more than others. It's a start towards a better system and ensures that those communities do not suffer more than others. I think that's very straightforward, and the data
Okay, thank you, Christopher. Andy, you can now go ahead and take a minute to answer the question.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I won't pretend to speak for minority students or Black students. That's not my place. I will say, as a first-generation low-income student, this has been on my mind a lot. And the reality is, if I were expelled for an honor offense, even as a scholarship student, the university administration would step in to help me transfer. This has been a standing process for over a decade now, and I could go to a comparable state institution with comparable financial aid and finish my education. With a compelled year suspension, I'm given that option, or I go home to where I live with my dad. I go cut grass for a year. And I imagine this would be the same for a lot of underprivileged students who would have to go back and work at restaurants or just simply wait out a year. I think the going back home would be a lot more harmful to me than transferring would. Similarly, I actually forgot my second point. That's super tough. Well, that's generally the line I'll draw with that. And oh, I remember my second point now. We talk about ad hoc reporting. When a professor has to give 15 hours of their time to a new system that they could have accomplished via the IR before, I highly doubt any professor is going to bother with it. They have never cited sanctioning as a problem in my conversations with them. And so I fear they're going to actually ad hoc handle their cases a lot more. And that does probably disproportionately affect minority students because they are probably going to be spotlighted by faculty in various instances. And I don't mean to project that on all faculty, but it's probably a thing that happens. And this system just pushes that more to the forefront.
Okay, thank you, Andy and Christopher, for answering that question. I will now turn things over to Gabby to get us started for a legislative session. Gabby, are you on Zoom on your laptop?
No.
Okay, so Cece's going to hand her laptop to Gabby. Everyone else is going to mute. Reps, when you speak during ledge session, I just ask that you keep yourself muted on your laptop. We'll leave Gabby's unmuted. Just speak loudly if you're here in person so the mic picks you up. So Gabby, go ahead and unmute on Cece's computer.
All right. Thank you. We will now enter legislative session. I will begin by calling roll. When I call your name, please raise your hand. Violet Cadet. Thank you. Lillian Rojas. Thank you. Nina Santana. Laura Arif. Thank you. Tyler Bush. Thank you. Landon Hobbs. Thank you. Carl Osius. Thank you. Tashar Robertson. Thank you. Christian Ephraim. Ella Tinch. Oh, I see you. Thank you. Jay Moody. Rathika Kormath Anand. Rand Perry. Jason Evans. Issa Fortuno. Thank you. Elizabeth Cruz. Thank you. Rafael Movsesian. Thank you. Spome Anwar. Katie Cruz. Thank you. Christopher Joseph. Andreas Masiakos. Thank you. Hongjia Yang. And Princess Olubishe Omasari. Thank you. The roll has been called. I'll now entertain the minutes from last week's general body meeting. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the minutes? If you have a comments, question, or concern, please raise your hand. I would now look favorably upon a motion to vote. Thank you. Are there any objections? If you have an objection, please raise your hand. Seeing no objections, the minutes pass. I will now entertain SR 22-04, a resolution denouncing the university's lifting of certain indoor mask mandates, and I'll entertain Tyler Bush to speak on this legislation. Oh, yeah.
Why don't you come up to the podium?
Okay. All right, thanks, Gabby. Hi, everyone. Tyler Bush here with this resolution. And the reason I'm bringing this resolution up is just because for me, this idea of lifting some mask mandates indoors appears to be ableism, plain and simple, at its finest, just because the idea of care when it affects certain groups of people on grounds, we've moved away from that idea when certain people are tired of the pandemic and the state of the pandemic, and basically creating an undercast of people and leaving those people out. And so in doing that, we're forgetting the most vulnerable and talking about being an inclusive university and one that is about equity and moving us forward. But limiting the opportunities of some people, though it may not affect healthy and able-bodied people, we're forgetting a whole community and group of people in the idea of community care that we talk about not only here in student council, but also just in general as a university. So, just plain and simple, being, looking out for each other and, calling on the university to revisit these policies and definitely look back into this, especially lifting those mask mandates right as we return from spring break. Like I always say, common sense isn't always so common, and 2 and 2 just doesn't add up. You're going to lift mask mandates after a period of intense travel for students. Again, just reversing all the progress that we've made supposedly, and it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't take everyone into account. So that's all I have to say on that, and I hope all the reps can support this. So thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns regarding this resolution? If you have a question or concern, please raise your hand. Andreas?
In the resolution, I'm reading it now, but I can't see a timeline as to when we as a representative body would be okay, or under what circumstances we as a representative body would be okay with the university removing this mask requirement. So I'm curious whether we could include something like that, saying like what guidance we'd like to see before approving or before supporting removal of it.
Tyler?
Well, for me, it just seems like the removal of mandates from the screen. And I think we can definitely look at, content of March 23rd, that I have to explain that it just seems so sudden. But for me personally, I think the mask mandate throughout the entire. Also, I feel like that encompasses all students who really rely on to feel in fact because of any underlying health conditions or the conditions that. So for me, that's where I'm coming from. Is that it's really the bare minimum to be on the thing.
I just have a point of order.
Ew.
So it seems like folks on Zoom can't hear very well, so.
Could you guys move over here?
Yeah, if you all wouldn't mind coming to the podium when you speak out, and then maybe if you want to just do a summary of that question and answer again, so the other reps can hear, that would be helpful, maybe.
Yeah, just come over here.
Yeah.
Andreas?
Yeah, one person.
Yeah, Andreas, you can ask your question and then Tyler will answer.
Here's the.
So my question for Tyler is whether we would consider putting some language in the bill, in the resolution, that would outline under what circumstances we would be okay with the university removing masking requirements.
Okay. And for me, I basically said that I don't have a problem with certain language, but for me, I think the institution of a mask mandate for the entire semester seems what is beneficial, not only just for some students, but for all students, and to, again, consider all students who may have underlying health conditions or their conditions at home, whether, considering who they live with or not, and those factors. So that's really why that language wasn't included in that bill.
Violet?
Yeah, I would. Can I just?
can just-
I would just say, sorry. I think Andreas has a really good point, and both him and Tyler do. So I think currently the CDC still recommends mask in indoor spaces, even with triple vaccinated, boosted, whatever you want to call it, people, because of the transmissibility of Omicron, especially within vaccinated or unvaccinated communities, although one is much higher. And so I think I would definitely support removing masks if the CDC had said that, but the CDC has still maintained, considering the low vaccination rates, not only within the nation, but Charlottesville itself as a community. We often forget, like, we as university students aren't the only people here. Faculty, staff live here, and they live in the Charlottesville community. So I think I totally understand being tired with masks. I get it. I'm there with you. But I would just say, if we want to edit the resolution, say we would fully support getting rid of mask mandates when the CDC recommends. And as of now, the CDC has maintained masking indoors, even in vaccinated populations. So I don't know if that's an amendment, but I don't know if it matters enough to be an amendment.
Hold on, let me raise the volume here. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay? Awesome. So I was wondering if we could maybe add something differentiating why a masking requirement is important in these buildings when many students are still attending social events. And I know many students in this body are still attending social events and attending restaurants and doing things unmasked. So to kind of address, I'm not attacking anybody, I promise. But to me, it seems a little hypocritical when I know we're all attending, or most of us are attending social events with large groups of people, going to bars, hanging out, even just study sessions unmasked. If we could add something and just say specifically why this mask mandate is important for our university community, even when like social life appears as if in some ways it has gone back to normal, I think that would make me feel a little better about the consistency of this bill and the content of this bill with everybody in this group's actions. And I can maybe draft some language right now and put that in the chat, but without that, I don't, yeah.
Would you like to make that, oh, yeah, Ella, would you like to make that an amendment? Okay, could you write what you, what you would have it as an amendment in the chat, please? Thank you.
Tyler, you have to guess this one.
Oh, Tyler, would you like to?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a problem with it. If it's however you see it or presented it, I don't have a problem with it.
Violet?
I think it was just an answer to Andreas.
Okay. So we'll wait on Ella to write that language. Abel,
Do you want to mute and turn this on the other side?
Ella?
I wanted to ask if there's any procedural thing we can do so I can have 2 minutes to write it.
Oh, Abel.
I was just, I was going to ask a question about some time. So we could go into a recess, but otherwise, I was just gonna ask if it would be helpful for me to help facilitate some sort of meeting with public health experts within the UVA administration for folks to meet with and get some clarity on like what their decision was made based on. I will share that in the past, the administration has been fairly, candid and honest in these like smaller question and answer type meetings. So it may be productive, though I doubt you'll be able to change the policy in the meeting. You could get some more information though on what it is that they're looking to use as metrics for masking or not masking.
Doesn't that make the resolution slightly?
I would say no. I would say no. I think Tyler's point is primarily one about, you know, accessibility, and that won't necessarily change if we learn that UVA is using, say, like ICU hospitalizations to determine whether or not we're going to mask or not regionally. But it could just be like helpful for you in any organizing efforts you have planned around this.
Tyler?
Yeah, I was gonna say, in the resolution, I did include some of the things that they said in the email. I don't know if that's all the information that they're looking to or citing for the reason for this policy, but some of it, let me find it within the legislation, is for the threat of the virus to fully vaccinated and healthy individuals, and also taking into account isolation numbers and testing. And what I also put in there is that isolation beds only account for like university provided isolation and not people isolating off grounds or even in on grounds housing, say if they live in a single.
Right.
And then testing doesn't necessarily account for testing that's not submitted if taken outside or somewhere, you know, from another provider that's not the university. So some of that,
Yeah.
I kind of addressed in that. But, you know, I'm not sure if those are the only metrics that they're using, like you said.
Abel?
Or absolutely. I think like you're exactly right to look to like the statement for those metrics. So like good job. The offer was only really to give you another chance to learn more about the current status on any of those measures. Or learn if there are others, but I think you're spot on then. And yeah, again, this line of fishing was in part to buy Ella some time, but yeah, you've definitely done your homework.
Okay. Thank you, Ella. Ella?
I'm open to changing some of the language, but that is my proposed amendment as it stands. If anybody wants to edit for clarity, that'd be appreciated.
I like that.
Okay, the proposed amendment is as follows. Although social life on grounds has returned to some semblance of normalcy, and many members of the community have enjoyed the privilege of meeting in large groups and attending larger unmasked social events, not all students in the university enjoy the ability to return to normal without the fear for contracting what could be a fatal case of COVID-19. As we transition towards a more lax COVID-19 protocols, it is critical that we keep our university as accessible as possible for immunocompromised students. Access to classrooms and university buildings is imperative for all students. Maintaining the masking requirement ensures this access. Can I get a motion to amend? Okay, thank you. Can I get a second? Thank you. Are there any objections? If you have an objection, please raise your hand. Andreas?
The wording classrooms are not included in the unmasked for UVA, so classrooms would still be required. A mask would still be required in classrooms.
Okay, could you move closer? Sorry. Ella?
I realize that. I guess my emphasis is not clear because it would be like classrooms and university buildings, but if that's not clear, then we can just take out the classrooms and part.
Okay, so it would be access to the university buildings, correct?
Maybe we could just say all parts of the university.
Okay, do you mind making that change right now?
Yep.
Thank you, Ella. So the previous amendment is similar. The only part that's changed is towards the bottom. It now reads, access to all parts of the university is imperative for all students. Maintaining the mask requirement ensures this access. I would now look favorably on a motion to amend. Can I get a second? Thank you. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns regarding this amendment? Seeing none, the motion carries. The amendment passes. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the amended legislation? Sorry, Lillian.
You think you can hear me from here?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. I just want to say, like, I appreciate Ella's amendment and I agree with it. That's why I didn't say anything. But I still think though, like, as someone who does go out and takes off their mask, I just ask the representatives to consider how you're going to vote for this. I know Ella brought up being like hypocritical. I know this amendment's in here. I still think it is hypocritical for us to vote yes on this to pass if we do engage in events where we take our masks off and we're in large groups of people, only because we can't act like we care about our community here on ground with our mask on and make this amendment being like, we need to consider everybody, because we don't consider everybody the minute we step foot off grounds, or if you're in a study room by yourself and your friends and there's like 10 of you. I don't know, like, to me, I just still find it hypocritical to vote for this as a yes if any of the reps do engage in social activities like that. And like Ella said, I'm not calling anybody out. I'll admit, like, I go out and have fun, but I'm just saying, I think this is something that you need to think about, because on the front, it's still a resolution denouncing the mask mandate. And so I feel like if you're, like I said, if you're hanging out with groups of people and you're taking your mask off, for you to say yes to this as if like you care when you're on grounds, I don't know. To me, it's like you either care when you're on grounds or you care when you're everywhere. So just something to think about.
Thank you, Ella. Lillian, are there any other comments, questions, or concerns regarding this resolution? Princess?
I feel like what you brought up does make sense, but then we should also take into account the dining halls where they do, I think it said that they're gonna unmask in the dining hall. Yeah, and then just like the staff and like, we see like,
Yeah, just come. Actually, can everybody, all the reps come this way? All the reps come this way.
Okay, so I was just saying that.
The dining halls.
Okay, so in dining halls, it's also like said that when the mask mandate like partially lifts, it's also gonna lift in the dining halls, but we should also take into account the staff and the workers that will be like exposed to like our germs and like COVID in general. If we do lift that mandate, that doesn't force students to wear their mask when they're getting up and like walking around or going to the bathroom or going like to get food or interacting this close with workers. And I feel like although like, yeah, some students do go off grounds and participate in like social events and activities, but we should also take into account that having this mandate up is also gonna like protect the staff and the workers who are probably like more likely to be immunocompromised than like most of the students at school.
Thank you. Ella had her hand up first. Oh, well, if you're responding, I'll let
I
you.
just feel like it's like a dress set, like comment.
Okay.
So then I can respond.
Yeah.
I understand that point. Like I thought about it too when I was reading it. I just feel like a dining hall specifically is a horrible example because nobody has their mask on. Like I've never seen anybody like walk in, sit down with their food, take their mask off to eat, and then immediately put it back on if they're doing work. Everybody's sitting there with their mask off the entire time. Like I understand, yeah, you're putting it on for 1 second to go get like a napkin or something, but I just feel like you're already like there's a lot of like barriers and stuff most of the time now. So like I only really go to Newcomb, so I don't want to speak on like the other ones. Most of the time in Newcomb now they have the place ready where you just walk up, you grab your plate, and you leave. And so I just feel like I don't really know, and like I don't want to like disregard the dining hall workers, but it's not like they're all wearing a mask. Like I don't know, like I think everybody, there's always people that walk around with their mask under their nose or stuff, and the dining hall workers, they do it all the time. Like at least the ones that I see, they're not really ever wearing a mask properly. I just feel like the dining hall specifically is just a bad place to be like, oh, we really need a mask mandate, because nobody is wearing it in the first place.
Princess?
Okay, like I feel like that makes sense, but then at the same time, I don't think I've ever seen a dining hall staff worker without their mask off, like without their mask on. And I've seen them like tell people that, oh, you need to put your mask up or wear your mask correctly. That's what I've seen at Oak Hill and at Newcomb. So I eat at both. I'm a first year, but
Yeah, sorry, Debbie.
Lily.
Yeah, I meant like on the nose like this,
Yeah.
instead of like completely off. I just feel like dining halls out of all examples, just because you normally have your mask off the entire time, it's just not the best place. And I will say, like, even at the library, like, think about it, Clun 2 literally got shut down at midnight because of mask non-compliance. So to me, it's just kind of like students are already not complying with these mask mandates. So I think it's just gonna get to the point where nobody's gonna listen eventually. Because I mean, even now, if you walk into a university building, you don't have a mask on, you're not gonna get kicked out. I've never seen anybody actually be like, you need to go. Like, they'll be like, put your mask on, they don't follow you. So I just feel like we're already seeing like mass non-compliance in many parts of the university. So I think that's probably part of the reason too, why UVA was like, we're just gonna do away with it. I'm not sure, I doubt we're ever gonna release that if that's part of the truth. But I'm just saying, we've already seen mass non-compliance. I don't think there's been a spike in cases with that mass non-compliance. And we've already seen proof of it, like I said, with Clun literally shutting down at midnight, Clun 2, because of all the people they were constantly spotting.
Ella? Lillian, I hear your point, because like, again, my first reaction when I read this legislation was like, well, I know everybody in this group is like not necessarily wearing your mask all the time when you're going out to a restaurant and avoiding eating in dining halls. Like, at this point, that's just not practical anymore. And I also agree, like, a lot of this doesn't really make sense. Like we were talking about at the beginning of the semester, how the eating and drinking exception for mask requirements is kind of ridiculous, because people will just take their mask off in a room, eat and drink. If you're infected, you've spewed your germs out everywhere in the room. What kind of pushed me in favor of this legislation is considering, I don't love putting it this way, but considering immunocompromised students have paid to go to this university, and they are no longer able to safely access buildings if people aren't wearing their masks. Yeah, there's social events happening. Yeah, the mask requirement isn't enforced, but there's a reasonable expectation of safety when you enter a university building. And I feel like this repealing that part of the mask requirement violates that. I think that UVA should have either done away with the mask requirement completely or just not done anything at all. And I also think, like, if we consider just the timing of this bill, everybody is gonna, not the timing of the bill, the timing of repealing the mask mandate, everybody is gonna be coming back from break. So there might be a spike. So while it does seem a little silly to, on one hand, I work in a restaurant, none of the customers that come in wear their masks. A lot of my coworkers aren't vaccinated. But also, I've been boosted. I had COVID. I know I'm probably fine. And I'm fine hanging out in like social events. And I will admit, like, I will go out to restaurants and I'll wear a mask when I go in, but I take it off when I sit down and I don't put it back on. So like, none of this makes sense. My point is, some of our peers aren't able to do that stuff yet. And so we should just aim to make our university, which everybody has a right to, everybody's paying for, everybody's a student here, we should make it as accessible as possible. And like, it's not that much of a big deal to just wear a mask throughout the end of the semester. I doubt we'll have a mask mandate in the fall. I'm not going to speculate anymore, but that's why I'm in favor of the legislation, even though the world doesn't make sense.
Thank you, Ella. Violet?
Yeah, so I totally agree with everybody, most things that have been said. And I feel like Lillian's point of mask non-complacency is really correct. Like, I think I've seen a lot of people not wearing the mask and all that, but I think that's an exact reason why we should support this resolution. So if there's already non-complacency, why should we further that? Because there are people still listening to the rules. I actively pull on my mask in Newcomb. I actively know I'm going to interact with people that I don't know. When I go out with my friends. I know them. I know their immunocompromised status. And it's very ableist, I feel like, of me to then come into school, not knowing who I may interact with if I walk into Newcomb, as in Newcomb, the building, and not wear a mask because they aren't in my bubble. They don't know who I hang out with. And while other people may be not complacent, it's the least I can do to make sure that I am complacent and following the rules. And I've spoken to not faculty, but staff who work in Newcomb who are immunocompromised. And if you're immunocompromised, you're not necessarily vaccinated or boosted, because depending on your level of immunocompromisability, I should really know this concerns I am, but whatever. And like staff who are immunocompromised are scared because they don't interact with us on the weekends. They are not going to bars with us. They're not hanging out like that. They come to work, hang out with their own bubble, do their own thing. And I think it's a lot to ask for them to come to work and then be subjects. And there's a lot of studies on how much the difference in transmissibility if both people are wearing masks versus if only one person is wearing masks. Because yes, it's very true. People who are immunocompromised could just wear masks, but one, that's ableist because that highlights them and their own fears and could target them for whatever we want to say. But also, it's the least we can do because we don't know everybody's experience. And there really are a good section of staff. I know at least 3 staff who work in Newcomb who are immunocompromised and have expressed that they are scared about coming to work and have requested to work hybrid the week this starts. Because number one, spring break, which Tyler and Princess have both raised, which is a huge lapse in the judgment of the university. But also, they don't interact with us. The only place they interact with us is within the university. And if I'm in Newcomb, I always wear my mask. I don't have a meal plan, so I don't often eat in Newcomb. And if I'm at work, I make sure I have my mask on. So I think we should keep masks on in buildings. And what is the point of the university reversing one and not reversing all? I may have a different take. They're like, we're not gonna wear masks at all. But why should I be more afraid of my classmates than the people who are sitting 5 feet away from me in Newcomb at a different table on the first floor? I think I truly support this bill, and I really think Silas' point about highlighting the ableism of the university's policy is really important. But I agree, there's a lot of non-complacency, and so the least the university can do is try to fight this non-complacency with rules that people will follow, because there will always be people who will follow them. Sorry if I was very long-winded, I don't know.
Thank you, Violet. Rand? Oh, you put your hand down, or did you still want to speak? No, okay. Andreas, did you have anything else to say?
Yes, I would just, so we keep throwing around immunocompromised and ableism. And I was just curious if we had numbers as to like how many people in the EVA community identify themselves as immunocompromised. I think that would be an important addition to the resolution.
It's not published as it's a health information violation.
Understood.
But I can tell you from experience as somebody who works at least in ONSP, in Newcomb, at least 3 staff members are, that I know. And that's, I'm not gonna say who or what, but just people I interact with, at least 3, have expressed that they're not vaccinated and the stress of workday constantly being like, you're not vaccinated, you're fired, which is not true. But at least 3 staff members are.
The staff members are not vaccinated, or the staff members?
No, they're vaccinated, but they're immunocompromised. Because a lot of people who are immunocompromised couldn't get the vaccine until there was a lot of different trials and time periods, depending on immunocompromisability. I myself am immunocompromised, but I took the vaccine the first chance I could, and I'm fine. But there are people with different levels, whether that's Crohn's or lupus, or different levels of immunocompromisability. What the word am I saying? I don't know what word I'm using, but levels, and that can mean, maybe I have Crohn's, so I'm much more sensitive to this type of respiratory issue versus me that I don't really suffer from respiratory issues, because that's not where I'm at.
Thank you. Rand?
Hey guys, am I coming through?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, also just to start out, I'm also immensely frustrated by like the piecemeal kind of nature of the restrictions that we've been seeing, like why it would be like if it's not safe to take a mask off in class, it should be not safe to take a mask off in JPJ. Like it has to be like one or the other. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. And I'm also very attuned to the perception of hypocrisy in the event of like when we're comparing what we as like representatives like might do or might like live like seeing friends like outside of class. But I think the main thing that I've been thinking about in regards to the mask mandate is that whether it's going to have like any practical effect one way or another, I think at this point most of the people who are concerned, rightfully so, about immunocompromised students, about the health of the university and Charlottesville communities, they're still going to wear a mask regardless of whether there's a mandate in place. And since there's no enforcement mechanism for the mandate, like no ambassadors are going around anymore like they were last year, the people who don't care are just going to continue to not wear masks, regardless of whether the mandate's still in place or not. So I'm not sure whether the presence or absence of the mandate is really going to have too much of an effect on the ground. I think a really a productive course of action would be to try to get the university to guarantee free high quality masks to any student, any faculty member, any dining hall worker, or other staff member who wants it, to vastly ramp up testing, especially when we're coming back from spring break. I would love to see the university require students to get tested coming back. But trying to think through the practical impact of whether the mandate stays in place or not. I'm not sure whether it would have the effects that we're really trying to see.
Thank you, Rand. Ella?
What I'm hearing from everybody is that what the university did with the mask policy is just inconsistent and doesn't make sense. And I think we can all agree that it doesn't make sense, whether you think that it doesn't make sense to, repeal any part of it, or if you think that it doesn't make sense to repeal it in some places, but not others. So I wonder if we could maybe revise our frustrations with the policy to reflect our discontent with the inconsistencies in UVA policy and the timeline. I wonder if maybe everybody could get behind denouncing when the mask requirement is repealed, or maybe saying that this language is confusing, because I don't think we'll get very far just trying to speak for workers or trying to speak for immunocompromised students. But it seems like everybody, regardless of what your take on this bill is, thinks that to some extent the university policy doesn't make sense. So I just wanted to get people's input on that.
Tyler?
I understand what you're saying, but I think that language is already included in there about the timing of the mandate removal. And to your other point, I'm blanking right now. But there is language included in there about that already.
I guess I was wondering if people would be okay. I don't know if this would just take out the whole point of the bill, but if we would be okay taking out the parts that deal with whether or not the mask mandate would be effective, and keeping the parts that say that it doesn't make sense and that the timeline doesn't make sense. What do people think about that?
Lily?
I'm assuming, you guys can hear me, right? Again, yeah, probably, okay. I would say that I do support that, Ella, because I can definitely get behind saying that I'm confused as to why, like everybody else has reiterated, you don't gotta wear a mask in JPJ, but you gotta wear a mask in class. Because like I said before, yeah, my contention with this is the fact that, in my opinion, I feel like we all are acting like we care about immunocompromised people, but then we're all going outside, and the minute we step outside the building, we're taking our mask off, and we're not putting it back on until we get back on the grounds. So, like I said, I think, I agree with you, Ella, that's the part of the bill where, like I said, there's mixed feelings, but I think if we do, want a general consensus from everybody, it should be on the timeline. That I can definitely get behind. So if anybody else wants to speak out about that, please.
Violet?
Should we maybe motion to table this bill? If there's so much around it, and we know it's not going to change the policy, and we'll come back from break. I completely agree with y'all's points. I do. But it seems like they want to almost make two bills or one bill that addresses the ableism aspect, which I think is a huge part of it. For me, another bill, I think both are equally important. Ableism, yeah, we want to keep the mask on in class because I know who I'm interacting with off grounds. I don't know who I'm interacting with on grounds, but at the same time, the university's decision to us after spring break is mind-boggling to me. It makes no sense. How they didn't think about that process, Jim, make it make sense. But I feel like we're gonna split them into two. It might take time that would make this session longer. So that's why I was just saying, motion table, if you want to make two separate bills or just vote for this bill and see if it passes or not, I'm down for whatever. I'm just proposing.
Okay. Are you motioning to table?
No, I guess I'm kind of asking, like, think about it, but like I can, but also like, will it pass? Who knows?
Okay. Ella,
Sorry, that wasn't.
Violet, I agree with your sentiment, and as much as I would just like to move on, I do think one way or the other, we should come to a consensus because we don't meet next week. And then the week after that is too close to when the mask mandate is repealed to actually do anything. And also for those immunocompromised students who like do depend on this mask mandate, again, like they don't have a choice of whether or not they go to class and like have to walk through buildings when they get to their classes. So I think, oh, it's okay, Violet. It's coming. Relief will be soon. Yeah, like these students don't have a choice and they're going to be put in a dangerous situation. So I think like we should just suffer through figuring out what we want to do right now.
thank you, Ella. Okay. Are there any other comments, questions, or concerns regarding this resolution? Seeing none, I will look favorably upon a motion to vote.
Motion vote, second.
Lincoln. We will now vote on this resolution. All those in favor, please raise your hands.
Digitally or in person?
Both. All those in favor, please raise your hands. All those opposed, please raise your hands. And all those abstaining, please raise your hands.
Oh, shit, sorry.
Rand, are you abstaining? SR 22-05 passes. I will now oh, I'm so sorry. I would like to speak on the next resolution. So I would like to move to temporarily appoint Violet as chair pro tempore. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns regarding this motion? Can I get a second? Are there any comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none, I will now see the chairship to Violet.
This mic is on, right? Yeah, okay.
Un momento, por favor. Sorry.
Okay. I will now entertain SR 22-05, a resolution in support of the referendum, quote, honor question 1, sanctioning reform, quote, and condemning the honor committee's historical bias and harm against marginalized students. I will now entertain Gabriela Hernandez to speak on this resolution.
Thank you, Violet. Hello, everyone. My name is Gabriela Hernandez, and I am the chair of the representative body and a representative for the College of Arts and Sciences. And I will be speaking on SR 22-05. The honor system prides itself on being able to create a community of trust. They tell first years that this is a community of trust is nothing like they've ever seen before, and many UV principals as students are rooted in the honor system and their decisions. I, however, question the validity of the honor system. How much do you really trust students if you say that any mistake against the honor system will result in expulsion? This is superficial trust that I argue affects honors work. According to Honors Bicentennial Analysis Report, data tracked from 2012 to 2017 showed white students comprising 58% of the student population made 30% of reports. Black students comprising 6% of the student population made 9% of the reports. Asian/Asian American students comprising 12% of the student population made 27% of the reports. And international students who comprise 10% of the student population made up 28% of reports. As a student of color, these numbers are disturbing. How can an organization make decisions that disproportionately affect marginalized student groups and call that fair and just? This might have something to do with the fact that according to the 2017-2018 Honor Audit Commission report, honor representatives' diversity breakdown was as follows: 1.3% Middle Eastern/North African, 2.6% Black/African American, 5.1% Hispanic Latino, 2.6% Caucasian/Hispanic/Latino, 10.3% Asian, 2.6% Caucasian Middle Eastern, and 65.4% Caucasian. I personally believe that this legislation should not be going up. The honor committee should have moved to create a multi-sanction system years ago. However, the honor committee has failed multiple proposals to create a multi-sanction system. More recently, an article published by the Cav Daily, the honor chair stated, under the referendum on the ballot, a first-generation and low-income student like myself would return home to cut grass for a year if I was found guilty of an honor offense. Wealthy students, in comparison, could live in Paris while enjoying a gap year. Stop using first-generation low-income students as chess pieces. Would you like to tell everyone what students face now if found guilty? Complete expulsion from the university. A 2-semester leave of absence is still a very strong sanction, but as a first-generation low-income student myself, the possibility of being expelled from the university entirely poses a much more serious threat to the futures of first-generation low-income students. And marginalized communities have been saying this for years. This honor referendum should not be the end of this conversation. This will be a step in the right direction, and so I hope you will all join me in voting yes on SR 22-05.
I will now entertain Cecilia Kane to speak on this resolution.
Thank you, Chair Cadet. So I think Gabby summed up really well why we should all support this legislation. I just want to address a couple of specific concerns that have been brought up by as students work to abolish single sanction expulsion. So the first one that I've been hearing is this will allow for more multicultural students to be reported to honor. What I want to say is that students of color are already currently disproportionately impacted by honors policies and systems of punitive policing generally. Demonstrating less disparities in recent years is not enough. You cannot simply erase decades of racist policies with 1 year and expect students of color to trust you and your institution with expulsion and to be a non-racist institution. The concern's been brought up that Title IX offenses can result in expulsion, therefore honor should also have the ability to expel students. To this, I would say that it's an odd claim to say that lying, cheating, and stealing should be held to the same standards that Title IX offenses are held to. And the last one I want to speak to is that it's essentially a gap year, and there's a disparity for low-income students and other students, and that for the average or affluent student, this will essentially result in a vacation for a gap year, and for the low-income student, this will cause disproportionate harm. This argument simply makes no sense to me. It does not hold water. How will expulsion be any different, and how it impacts low-income students? As a low-income student myself, I can guarantee you that less harm would be done to my life if I worked for 1 year and were able to come back to school rather than permanent expulsion from my institution. I agree that a multi-sanction system could create more racial disparities, especially because humans are biased. They have biases, and humans adjudicate these things and create consequences. But the potential harm would be reduced if expulsion were off the table entirely. It's not everyone else's job to make honor anti-racist, as if it ever could be as an institution. It is, however, our job to force their hand in making themselves having a less harmful and racist impact. Honor has stalled for years, for decades even, in creating a fair multi-sanction system. If they don't take the first step themselves, the student body will use our power to make them. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns about this resolution? Ella.
I just wanted to speak in favor of the resolution. Personally, I don't think that honor is a good institution, and I don't think that it ever will be. I don't even want to characterize this as an important first step towards reform. But I do think that this resolution is very important to limiting the power of some select group of university students to ruin other students' lives. There was a great opinion piece in the Cav Daily published anonymously about a student who was expelled several years ago, I think 15 years ago. I encourage everybody to read it. It's a very quick read. You can read it right now while I'm talking. But I don't think that any group of students should have this power in the university. I think it's ridiculous. I don't think students are qualified to expel other students. And it's an incredibly punitive system that, again, just punishes a lot of. Okay, I'm gonna get off my soapbox, but I think this is an important resolution. And I think that for honor to characterize it as anything other than a claim to power to maintain all the powers that they have right now is dishonest. And I understand wanting to justify this power under student self-governance. But I don't think our university really practices student self-governance in many meaningful ways. And I don't think that this is an evidence of appropriate student self-governance. Yeah. So I'm in favor of this resolution.
Are there any other questions, comments, or concerns? Abel?
Okay. I was just going to make I was going to ask a quick question. So as all of the representatives hopefully know, resolutions have to have directives in them. And I can see that the second resolve clause supports all members of the student body to vote yes on this resolution, which is certainly a directive. I wanted to encourage us to maybe think of an amendment that would add a directive for student council. Like, what action could we take? How could we leverage our substantial resources to speak on this honor referendum, either in favor or against it, depending on how you all choose to vote. But I would love to see a clearer institutional directive added to the resolution, once again, in line with however you all choose to vote. But that is totally within your jurisdiction as representatives. And I encourage you to, get creative about what STUDCO can do to mobilize students to vote this week.
I might add an amendment, motion to amend to add a resolve clause.
Can you motion to amend?
Yes, I can. Well,
Okay, motion to
thank you.
amend.
I would say motion to amend to add a resolve clause that reads, something like, student council should put aside funding for tabling to support students voting yes on the honor referendum and use their public access to the student body to encourage students to vote yes.
Who is tabling? Abel? Wait, so we'll need the language of the amendment written in the chat.
Oh, she put it there.
All
She did.
Gabby, you got it?
No, no.
Who is tabling? It's tomorrow.
Okay, no, it's not talking. Okay, that's fine.
No, I just,
Oh, table.
well.
Oh, sorry.
Madam Chair, first of all, you're not allowed to ask questions.
Okay, sorry.
Second of all.
Sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. There are, roughly 300 members of the student council. If you all choose to add healing as a directive, then you can rely on all of the other branches to utilize their membership as well as, your own rep body membership to create tabling shifts. And sorry about that. Can y'all hear me now? I was just saying, well, so the chair asked tabling with what resources, essentially. And I said that student council has, roughly 300 members. And if you all give the organization a directive to table, then it's up to the representative bodies, 20, 30 members, as well as all of the other branches to create tabling, staffing, signups, and make that happen today, or I mean, tomorrow through Friday. But financial resources are certainly within your jurisdiction to allocate. And then any personnel or labor resources are directives that you oversee and are fully within your jurisdiction. So the short answer is our membership will do it, but you can tell us to do it.
Okay. Anybody gonna motion the amendment? Any other questions, comment, concern? Oh, sorry, Gabby.
Motion to amend.
Okay, motion to amend. Seconded, okay. The proposed amendment is, sorry. Student council should allocate $200 to be accessed for tabling to encourage students to support voting yes on the referendum. Student council should use its public access to the student body via social media and other channels to encourage students to vote yes on the referendum. Are there any objections to the proposed amendment? If you have an objection, please just raise your hand in Zoom. Are those guys, Rand and Ella, is that a raised hand from before or just from the, the objection? Okay, sorry.
I had a question. I don't think the hand was.
Yeah,
was
Rand.
in time. Yeah, so with only a couple of days until the end of voting, what would the $200 be used for by the tablers?
Abel? Oh, Cecilia?
Okay, so yeah, my thought was that if people who are supporting the referendum need help with things like printing, maybe like getting supplies, I don't know, a cookie for people to stop by the table, that could be helpful. I'm sure the whole $200 won't be allocated, but it might be useful for things like printing materials for people who are doing that tabling, getting access to, we can probably find tables for free, but just in case there are unforeseen expenses. Does that answer the question?
Ella?
Similar question, can we use CIO printing so that we don't have to allocate that money? Can we get a graphic completed tonight and actually do this? And will people sign up for tabling slots? That's another one of my questions, because I know it's also midterms right now and we're all busy. So if we can get like people in the rep body or in the general membership, just like 20 to 30 people to raise their hands in Zoom or something and say like, oh, I will commit to one tabling shift, then I would be in favor of this amendment. Yeah.
Yes, Cecilia?
Yes. Those were great questions. So I would say, yes, we can use CIO printing. I would say I would allocate that funding. And again, it might not be fully utilized, but money for food to have food at tabling. I know Honor allocated like $1,000 to buy pizza to table against the referendum the other day. So I think probably putting some money towards like some pizza or something to get people to stop by the table for it could be good and fair. And then I know that the people from the Honor Committee who are supporting and wrote the referendum have graphics designed and ready to go. So perhaps Student Council can be reposting those. And I'm more than happy to help with getting like a sign up sheet up for tabling tonight.
Okay, are there any other questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, so again, I would look favorably upon a motion to amend. The proposed amendment is, just rereading it, sorry y'all. Student Council should allocate $200 to be accessed for tabling to encourage students to support voting yes on the referendum. Student Council should use its public access to the student body via social media and other channels to encourage students to vote yes on the referendum. If you haven't any objections, please just raise your hand in the Zoom. Or in person, I guess. Okay, the motion carries and the amendment passes. Okay. Back to the resolution as a whole. Are there any questions, comments, and concerns on the resolution? On this resolution, sorry. Okay, seeing none, I would look favorably upon a motion to vote.
Second.
Yada, 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 sorry. We'll now vote on resolution SR 22-05. All in favor, please raise your hands. Yes. 11. I counted that out loud. That's embarrassing. All opposed, please raise your hands. No. Oh, I forgot about that. Okay. All abstaining, please use the raise hand function. Okay. The motion passes with 12 yeas and no noes or abstentions. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Oh, I will now, whatever.
Here, can I keep the last?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Violet. All right, everybody, I will now read the vote count for our meeting. SR 22-04 passes with 12 yeas, 5 nays, and 1 abstention. SR 22-05 passes with 12 yeas, 0 nays, and 0 abstentions. And we will now exit legislative session.
All right, I am going to, sorry guys for the technical issues. I'm gonna turn off the live stream and stop recording before moving to public comment.